An unmarked folder inside the Gatcom Park estate office just blew open, exposing Queen Camilla's deepest secret. Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Laurence, Princess Anne's fiercely discreet husband, has uncovered a 15-year paper trail of systemic palace manipulation. This is not another collection of vague tabloids or internet rumors. This is a highly technical naval logistics expert, presenting concrete proof of a shadow operation aimed right at the bloodline. The corporate deception he just revealed is far worse than the royal family ever anticipated. An unmarked folder in the estate office. A blue plastic ruler aligned perfectly with a row of figures on a financial spreadsheet inside the main office at Gatcom Park. The date on the digital desk clock was April 14th. Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Laurence adjusted his reading glasses, staring at an anomaly in the estate's land registry logs. He tapped a specific row of numbers with his pencil. The numbers did not make logical sense. As a former naval officer specialized in high-stakes maritime logistics, Timothy approached royal administration like a military campaign. He looked at a series of automated land transfers dating back 15 years. The public believed that the properties surrounding Princess Anne's private country home were held by local farming families. The digital records on his monitor revealed a completely different corporate reality. The surrounding lands were actually controlled by a complex web of shell companies based in the British Virgin Islands. Sir Timothy traced the corporate ownership routes back through a maze of London legal firms. He discovered that the ultimate beneficiary of these offshore entities was a private family trust. The sole signature authorizing the initial funding for the land purchases in 2011 belonged to Queen Camilla's personal financial manager. This discovery sent an immediate shockwave through the Gatcom Park administration. Usually, any property acquisitions bordering a senior royal estate must be vetted by the Royal Protection Command. The security team must ensure that the perimeters remain secure against external surveillance threats. Camilla's private trust had systematically bypassed this vetting process by utilizing corporate anonymity. The tension escalated 48 hours later when Sir Timothy attempted to access the Central Royal Property Database in London to download the original deeds. He logged into the secure terminal using his standard security credentials. The screen flashed red, indicating that his user access level had been lowered. A notice appeared stating that all land files related to the Gloucestershire region were now restricted under a new sovereign security directive. Sir Timothy did not call the central help desk. He knew a standard tech support call would alert the palace communications team. Instead, he used an encrypted digital token to copy the local cache files onto a secure external drive. He then drafted a concise, factual memo detailing the access restriction and had it delivered to a senior partner at a trusted Mayfair law firm. The mystery lay in why the Queen's financial team had spent 15 years quietly buying up the acreage immediately surrounding Princess Anne's private home. Sir Timothy believed it was not a simple matter of real estate investment. He suspected a deliberate, long-term campaign to control the physical security and operational independence of the Princess Royal's household. The resolution to this immediate mystery came from the local cached files on the external drive. The data contained a series of landscape surveying maps commissioned by the offshore shell companies in 2012. The maps did not focus on soil quality or agricultural potential. They mapped out the precise line-of-sight trajectories from the surrounding hills down into Princess Anne's private residential quarters. This technical documentation proved that the shell companies had established physical observation points overlooking the estate. The owners had used their legal status as neighboring landlords to install high-powered agricultural weather stations along the boundary fences. Sir Timothy's cached data revealed that these stations contained advanced digital relay sensors capable of monitoring local radio frequencies. The strategy had a direct impact on Princess Anne's daily operations. Because Camilla's trust controlled the surrounding perimeters, they could track exactly who visited Gatcom Park without relying on official police protection logs. They knew which politicians, military officials, and foreign dignitaries were meeting with the Princess Royal long before those meetings were ever logged in the Central Court Circular. But the digital files contained an even deeper revelation that connected the past to the present. Beneath the land registry data, Sir Timothy uncovered a series of internal palace memos from 2011 regarding the restructuring of the royal household budgets. The memos showed that Camilla's team had used the tracking data to argue that Princess Anne's independent security detail was a redundant expense that should be scaled back to save taxpayer funds. Sir Timothy's recent actions have triggered an absolute panic within the Queen Consort's private office at Clarence House. The current administration realizes that their 15-year shadow operation has been completely exposed by a man who understands the exact mechanics of technical surveillance. The Navy veterans data dump means that the palace can no longer claim that the corporate encirclement of Gatcom Park was an accidental overlap of private investments. The conflict has effectively split the palace legal teams into two defensive camps. One side wants to launch an immediate countersuit, claiming that Sir Timothy violated the Official Secrets Act by downloading the restricted property logs. The traditionalist faction is warning that a public trial would force the disclosure of Queen Camilla's private offshore trust records, exposing her financial maneuvers to full parliamentary scrutiny and leaving her completely isolated within the court. The 15-year paper trail of erasure. A stack of faded green ledger books sat beside an old manual hole puncher on Sir Timothy Lawrence's desk. The calendar page on the wall showed May 11th. Timothy pulled a manila folder from the middle of the pile. He opened it to a spreadsheet tracking the budget lines for the sovereign grant allocations from 2011 through 2025. The columns of numbers detailed an aggressive, long-term reallocation of capital. Under standard civil service protocols, funding for senior royal households is determined by a committee of Treasury officials based on public duty metrics. These internal logs showed a completely different mechanism. A series of fine print amendments had been quietly introduced during the annual autumn budget reviews. The amendments systematically diverted operational funding away from Princess Anne's core offices. Her travel allowances for international trade missions were frozen at 2011 levels. Simultaneously, the budget for her personal administrative staff was cut by a flat 12%. The logs revealed that the saved capital did not return to the public treasury. It was redirected to fund a newly expanded digital communication team based at Clarence House. This administrative shift had an immediate practical impact on Princess Anne's daily operations. Her team had to abandon their dedicated secure fax network because the maintenance contracts were stripped from the central palace budget. They were forced to migrate their communications to the shared palace server system, which was entirely monitored by the central IT team, reporting directly to Queen Camilla's office. The tension turned concrete when Sir Timothy cross-referenced the budget cuts with a list of canceled international tours. In the spring of 2012, Princess Anne had been scheduled to lead an extensive trade delegation to sub-Saharan Africa. 3 weeks before her departure date, a formal notification arrived from the palace secretariat stating that the flights had been canceled due to sudden logistical constraints. Sir Timothy knew the explanation was factually inaccurate. He checked the royal flight logs for that exact week. The state-funded aircraft assigned to Anne had been grounded in London. It was not undergoing maintenance. It was held on standby for a private weekend excursion to a resort in the south of France by members of Camilla's immediate family. Timothy decided to track the decision-making pipeline. He drafted a formal information request under an old naval intelligence protocol that still granted him view access to the master of the household's personal correspondence logs. He requested the original, unredacted email threads concerning the cancellation of the African tour. The response from the Central Registry was a single, heavily redacted PDF document. Every name, date, and email signature was covered by a thick black digital block. The archive clerk attached a brief note stating that the original correspondence had been classified as sovereign private material and sealed under a 75-year privacy embargo. The mystery lay in why a routine scheduling conflict over a trade tour required a level of secrecy usually reserved for matters of state security. Sir Timothy suspected that the emails contained direct evidence of a systemic effort to reduce Princess Anne's visibility on the global stage. The goal was to ensure that the public saw the new Queen Consort as the primary female representative of the family, leaving the born royals entirely in the shadow of the modern marketing machine. The resolution to this mystery came from a physical source inside the Gatcom Park estate stables. An old family groom found a discarded leather dispatch bag behind a stack of winter horse blankets. Inside the bag was a duplicate set of printed paper memos from April 2011. The pages had been saved by a retired household secretary who had kept them to protect her own pension record. The unredacted paper memos revealed the exact text of the instructions sent to the flight scheduling unit. The order did not come from an administrative clerk. It was signed by Queen Camilla's private secretary. The text explicitly commanded the unit to prioritize the comfort of the Queen's family over any secondary royal charity obligations, stating that the public image of the newly established household took legal precedence over historical bloodline tours. This discovery provided Sir Timothy with the ironclad proof he needed to map out the entire 15-year campaign. He realized that the isolation of Princess Anne was not a series of accidental budget constraints. It was a calculated corporate strategy to dilute her institutional power by systematically stripping away her independent communication networks, her transport priorities, and her administrative staff. The psychological impact of this paper trail was immediate within the Gatcom Park household. Princess Anne had spent 15 years quietly absorbing the administrative setbacks, believing they were the natural consequence of a modernizing monarchy. Seeing the written proof that her sister-in-law had actively engineered the restrictions changed the dynamic entirely. The current palace administration is now facing an unprecedented crisis as Timothy begins to weave these facts into a formal legal challenge. Several of the senior courtiers who signed off on the original 2011 reallocations are still holding high-ranking positions within the modern court. If these paper memos are shared with the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee, it will trigger an immediate investigation into the misuse of sovereign grant funds for personal family maneuvers. The panic in London has resulted in a series of frantic closed-door meetings. Camilla's legal team is attempting to locate the retired secretary to force her to sign a retrospective non-disclosure agreement regarding the contents of the stable dispatch bag. Princess Anne and Sir Timothy have already moved the physical documents to a secure vault outside the capital, leaving the modern palace handlers completely exposed to a massive historical reckoning. The Shadow Veto of 2011. A heavy oak door with a polished brass plate reading Privy Council Office closed with a firm click in London. The date on the master attendance ledger was October 14, 2011. A team of senior legal advisors representing the royal household sat across a long mahogany table from a select committee of constitutional attorneys. The purpose of this meeting was highly specific. The group was tasked with drafting the formal administrative guidelines that would accompany the upcoming changes to the royal succession laws. The public believed that the 2011 changes were simply a modern step to ensure that a firstborn daughter would hold the same right to the throne as a son. The unredacted minutes discovered by Sir Timothy Laurence revealed a second, completely hidden agenda hidden within the fine print of the transition documents. Attached to the main statutory changes was a private, internal instrument known as the Household Protocol Amendment. This specific clause completely altered the internal corporate hierarchy of the family. Usually, the Princess Royal held a permanent position as a senior advisor on the internal family councils, giving her a direct say in how the royal estates were managed and how private family funds were allocated. The 2011 amendment quietly stripped her of this administrative veto power. The text of the amendment stated that any executive decisions regarding private family trusts would require the joint approval of the reigning monarch and the queen consort, entirely eliminating the historical requirement to consult the monarch's siblings. This change effectively handed Queen Camilla full co-management rights over the family's material assets, while completely sidelining Princess Anne from the decision-making process. The tension escalated when Princess Anne discovered the existence of the amendment during a routine review of estate paperwork in November of 2011. She immediately requested a private audience with her brother, then the Prince of Wales, at Clarence House. She warned him that handing corporate veto power to non-bloodline members would leave the family's private assets vulnerable to external manipulation. The Prince of Wales did not defend the legal text. He simply stated that the modernization of the household required a streamlined executive structure to avoid future internal conflicts. He refused to reverse the amendment, leaving the document to be officially logged into the palace registry the following morning. Anne realized that the central administration was actively working to dilute her institutional authority. A deep mystery surfaced during Sir Timothy's recent review of the original council, minutes from that meeting. He noticed that the signature on the authorization form for the Household Protocol Amendment did not belong to any of the constitutional attorneys or the King's advisors. The document had been signed using a private power of attorney stamp, registered to a prominent London public relations firm. Timothy knew that a private PR firm had zero legal authority to alter internal constitutional protocols. He launched an investigation into the firm's historical client logs from 2011. He discovered that the agency had been hired under a highly confidential corporate contract to manage the public image transition of the family during the restructuring process. The resolution to this mystery lay in a series of encrypted billing invoices found within the agency's archive files. The firm had not been hired by the Central Palace administration. The invoices were billed directly to Queen Camilla's private financial trust. The Queen's team had quietly weaponized the public relations firm to design a protective shield around her new role, using the media campaign to justify the administrative removal of Princess Anne from the family's executive councils. The PR agency had designed a highly coordinated media strategy that emphasized the necessity of a modern, streamlined monarchy. Every time Princess Anne attempted to raise concerns about the loss of bloodline immunities, the agency would brief select royal journalists to write articles framing the Princess Royal as an old-fashioned traditionalist who was resisting the natural evolution of the modern firm. This sophisticated media pressure completely isolated Princess Anne within the family. She realized that any public resistance to the administrative changes would be spun by the PR machine as a sign of personal jealousy or institutional stubbornness. She chose to withdraw into her charity work, leaving the corporate machinery of the palace entirely in the hands of Camilla's advisors. The modern fallout from this shadow veto has reached a critical flashpoint today. Sir Timothy's discovery of the power of attorney stamp means that the entire legal foundation of the 2011 household restructuring is factually compromised. If a private PR firm used an unauthorized stamp to alter internal royal protocols, the amendment itself could be declared legally void by a court of law. The current palace advisors are in a state of absolute panic as Sir Timothy prepares to hand these unredacted minutes over to a team of independent constitutional lawyers. If the amendment is overturned, Princess Anne will automatically regain her historical veto power over the family's private estates, completely dismantling 15 years of systemic isolation and leaving Queen Camilla's administrative network entirely exposed to a massive institutional challenge. Unveiling the truth from the estate ledger. A high-resolution surveying map printed on heavy matte paper rolled flat onto the oak desk inside the Gatcom Park estate office. The date on the land registry filing was November 14th, 2024. Sir Timothy Laurence used a brass paperweight to hold down the curled corners. He drew a sharp red line along the northern boundary fence where the Spencer family property lines met the Crown holdings. The land registries detailed an unadvertised sequence of acquisitions. Under British property laws, land adjacent to a high-security royal residence must be registered with the local county council to prevent unmonitored development. These physical ledgers showed a completely different arrangement. Over a 12-year period, 6 separate parcels of land bordering Gatcom Park had been purchased through a series of nominee companies. The transactions were executed in total silence, hidden behind a firewall of offshore banking coordinates. The public believed these fields were standard agricultural investments managed by local farming collectives. The bank routing numbers on the original transfer receipts proved otherwise. The funds used to close the sales originated from a private account linked to the Queen's personal jewelry and styling trust, managed by a London asset firm. The strategic layout of these purchases was immediately clear to an experienced naval veteran. The bought-up plots did not follow standard farm boundaries. They formed a tight, contiguous semicircle around Princess Anne's primary stables and her private security entrance. Camilla's private trust had effectively encircled the entire operational heart of the Gatcom Park estate. The tension turned public when the Gloucestershire Planning Authority issued a sudden notice regarding the installation of 3 high-intensity security masts along the northern boundary line. The masts were officially described as essential cellular communication relays for the local community. Sir Timothy inspected the physical foundations of the first mast on a Thursday morning, noticing that the directional microwave dishes were pointed directly at the windows of Princess Anne's private study. Timothy immediately contacted the local telecommunications board to demand a copy of the signal transmission logs. The board refused to release the data, citing a non-disclosure agreement signed with the land's corporate owners. Sir Timothy was blocked from his own border security data, realizing that the surveillance loop had already been closed. A deep mystery emerged when Timothy cross-referenced the corporate names of the nominee companies with the historic retirement logs of the royal household. He found that the primary director of the offshore trust that managed the land purchases was a retired court official who had served as master of the household at Buckingham Palace during the late 1990s. The director had retired on a modest state pension, yet his private banking files showed sudden, massive injections of capital during the exact months the Gatcom boundary land was being purchased. Timothy needed to find out why a long-serving, trusted courtier would participate in a covert operation designed to monitor the Princess Royal's private home. The resolution to this mystery came from a physical meeting at a quiet railway hotel in Bristol. Sir Timothy met with the retired master of the household under the pretense of discussing an upcoming naval charity event. During the conversation, Timothy produced copies of the offshore bank transfers, laying them flat on the small table alongside the tea service. The retired official did not deny his involvement. He admitted that Queen Camilla's inner circle had approached him shortly after her marriage to King Charles. They had convinced him that Princess Anne's traditionalist influence over the internal family councils constituted an existential threat to the modernization of the monarchy. He had agreed to act as the corporate face for the land purchases, believing he was protecting the stability of the reigning couple. He had utilized his internal knowledge of the palace's security protocols to ensure that the boundary acquisitions never triggered an automated review by the Metropolitan Police. The high-intensity masts were not designed to monitor cellular data. They were equipped with specialized frequency sniffers meant to intercept the unencrypted radio communications used by Princess Anne's local estate managers. This discovery changed the entire power balance within the court. Sir Timothy realized that the operational independence of Gatcom Park had been systematically compromised from the outside. Camilla's team had used the real-time logistical data to stay 3 steps ahead of Princess Anne's schedules, allowing them to intercept her patronages and reallocate her funding before she could mount an administrative defense. The psychological impact of this discovery tore through the family's remaining diplomatic channels. Princess Anne refused to attend the annual Christmas luncheon at Sandringham, staying behind at Gatcom Park with her husband to oversee a full sweep of the estate's local communications infrastructure. The physical maps and the Bristol Confession provided the family with ironclad proof of an active domestic spying operation run within the court itself. The modern fallout has triggered an immediate crisis for the Queen's advisors in London. Sir Timothy has already shared the physical mapping data and the tracking numbers with Prince William's security team at Kensington Palace. The Prince of Wales's household has reacted with absolute fury, recognizing that the same surveillance hardware could easily be turned against their own children's properties. The Central Palace administration is now completely paralyzed as Sir Timothy prepares to submit the full boundary report to the Independent Surveillance Commissioner. The King's private secretary has attempted to launch an internal mediations process to keep the matter out of the public eye, offering to dismantle the boundary masts within 48 hours. Sir Timothy and Princess Anne have rejected the offer, demanding a full independent audit of every offshore trust linked to the Queen's financial office, setting the stage for a total collapse of trust at the highest level of the state. The broken pact that severed the court. A physical copy of the Windsor Accord of 2005 sat on the mahogany table inside the library at Clarence House. The date on the office ledger was January 14, 2026. Sir Timothy Laurence laid a modern, typed addendum right next to the original document. The signature page from 21 years ago showed the neat handwriting of King Charles, Princess Anne, and Queen Camilla. This accord was originally drafted to ensure a smooth transition when Charles and Camilla married. It was a formal truce. The text guaranteed that Princess Anne would retain total operational sovereignty over her charitable network. It also promised that her household would never be subjected to central vetting by incoming palace advisors. The presence of the land registry receipts in the Bristol Confession proved that the truce had been violated. The tension turned concrete when the king's private secretary attempted to hand Sir Timothy a newly revised royal charter during a brief meeting in London. The new charter proposed a centralized security fund for all senior royals, which would require the Gatcom Park protection logs to be submitted to Clarence House every Friday afternoon. The secretary explained that the change was necessary to streamline security operations across the entire family network. Sir Timothy did not touch the document. He pulled a black fountain pen from his pocket and wrote a single sentence across the cover page of the proposed charter. He stated that the Gatcom Park household stood firmly by the original protections of the 2005 Accord. He then walked out of the office, leaving the king's private secretary alone with the modified files. The administrative refusal triggered an immediate counterstrike from London. Within 24 hours, the Central Palace press team issued a quiet notice to the BBC scheduling division. They requested that the coverage of Princess Anne's upcoming patronage dinner with the Royal Navy be moved from the evening news broadcast to a late-night digital streaming slot. The palace team claimed the adjustment was due to an unexpected surge in diplomatic news from Europe. A deep mystery emerged when Sir Timothy checked the official government communications log for that exact Thursday evening. He found that no diplomatic emergency had been logged by the Foreign Office. There was no breaking news from Europe. The scheduling request had been submitted to the BBC 3 weeks prior to the alleged diplomatic surge, indicating that the media demotion was planned well in advance. Sir Timothy needed to find out who within the broadcasting committee had authorized the media blackout of Princess Anne's naval event. He utilized an old contact inside the Ministry of Defense who managed the public relations budget for active military charities. The contact pulled the original, physical communication receipts from the BBC's central liaison desk in London. The resolution to this mystery lay in a private email trail between a senior television executive and a branding consultant based in Mayfair. The branding consultant was the exact same advisor who managed Queen Camilla's private financial trust accounts. The emails showed that the consultant had offered the network exclusive, behind-the-scenes access to a high-profile royal tour in exchange for the deliberate reduction of Princess Anne's television visibility. The consultant had explicitly stated that the Queen's office wanted to clear the media's schedule of any competing royal narratives during the winter months. They were using their leverage over major television networks to systematically erase the Princess Royal's public contributions, making it look as though she was quietly stepping back from her duties. This real-time manipulation proved that the corporate machinery was actively working to enforce the isolation of the born royals. The discovery of this media manipulation completely broke the remaining diplomatic ties between the two households. Prince William's chief of staff caught wind of the BBC email logs and immediately pulled his own children's schedules from the Central Palace Diary database. The Prince of Wales refused to allow Kensington Palace to participate in any joint public appearances managed by Camilla's Mayfair branding consultants. This unified resistance has left Queen Camilla's administrative team in a completely vulnerable position. They realized that their methods had been thoroughly mapped out by a technical expert who refused to negotiate over administrative loopholes. The old guard within the court has openly aligned themselves with Sir Timothy, viewing his factual discoveries as a necessary defense of the monarchy's core traditional boundaries. The panic in London has led to a total paralysis within the central administration. The King's private secretary has tried to schedule 3 separate mediation dinners at Sandringham to resolve the boundary and media disputes, but Princess Anne and Sir Timothy have consistently declined the invitations. They have stated that they will only return to the table when the Mayfair branding contracts are permanently cancelled and the microwave surveillance masts are dismantled by independent contractors. The sovereignty of the permanent guard. A white plastic zip tie snapped around a bundle of black coaxial cables at the base of the northern boundary fence. Sir Timothy Laurence dropped the handheld wire cutters into his canvas tool bag. The date on his wristwatch was February 28, 2026. Behind him, 2 independent electrical contractors from Bristol began lowering the first microwave relay dish from its steel mounting bracket. The physical dismantling of the boundary equipment marked a definitive turning point in the palace standoff. Under the terms of the private settlement reached the previous Tuesday, Queen Camilla's financial trust agreed to dissolve the offshore nominee companies entirely. The land parcels encircling Gatcombe Park were legally transferred to a permanent agricultural land trust managed by the Duchy of Lancaster. The public saw a routine property consolidation on the local news. The real victory was the total removal of the unauthorized frequency sniffers. The strategic retreat by London was forced by the concrete data Timothy had gathered. He had spent 15 years compiling the Green Ledger books and tracking the diverted sovereign grant allocations. The evidence was no longer sitting in a desk drawer at Gatcom Park. It had been formally logged with the High Court Family Division trustees. Queen Camilla's private office realized that any further attempts to centralize Princess Anne's protection logs would result in an immediate public disclosure of the Mayfair branding contracts. A final mystery surfaced during the final inventory sweep of the newly acquired boundary plots. A technician clearing out the derelict farm building found a small electronic data logger hidden behind a loose brick in the old dairy cellar. The logger was still drawing power from a secondary solar panel mounted on the roof. The unit contained a modern solid-state memory card that had been logging data up until the very morning. Sir Timothy knew that the offshore nominee companies had supposedly ceased operations 3 weeks earlier. He connected the memory card to a standalone diagnostic laptop inside his study. The screen displayed an automated data stream that was routing encrypted files to an IP address based at an international digital storage hub in Zurich. The data did not consist of audio logs or radio frequencies. It was a digital copy of the private car registration logs for every vehicle entering the Sandringham estate. The presence of the Sandringham tracking data made no logical sense within a local Gloucestershire boundary dispute. Timothy launched an immediate inquiry through a contact at the Maritime Shipping Registry, who specialized in identifying offshore corporate servers. He tracked the ultimate ownership of the Zurich storage hub back to its original corporate registration file. The resolution to this final mystery lay in an administrative document signed in September of 2024. The Zurich account had not been opened by Queen Camilla's branding team. The corporate papers showed that the account was funded by a digital security firm wholly owned by the Crown Estate Commissioners. The institution itself was monitoring the movements of the entire family to protect the central administrative hierarchy from internal dissent. The palace had weaponized its own security infrastructure to keep tabs on both the born royals and the married consorts. They used the regional boundary disputes as a convenient cover to install wider tracking arrays across the country. By discovering the Zurich link, Sir Timothy had breached the deepest layer of the palace's modern surveillance apparatus, giving Princess Anne absolute leverage over the central administration. The Navy veteran used this final discovery to secure a permanent, ironclad guarantee for the next generation. He met with Prince William at an unmarked office near the London docks, handing over the Zurich configuration codes. The Prince of Wales immediately utilized the technical proof to force a complete restructuring of the Crown Estate Security Board, removing 3 senior officials who had managed the covert tracking programs since 2011. The power balance within the court has permanently shifted away from the modern public relations advisors. The traditionalist faction, anchored by Princess Anne and backed by Prince William's household, has successfully re-established the hard boundaries protecting the bloodline's historical immunities. The corporate machinery used by Camilla's branding consultants has been completely dismantled from the inside out, leaving the Queen Consort entirely isolated from the future governance of the family trusts. As the contractors loaded the last piece of steel framing into their truck, Sir Timothy Laurence walked back toward the main house alongside his wife. The iron-bound ledgers were safely locked away, and the perimeter was completely clear of external microwave dishes. The 15-year paper trail had done its work, proving that the quietest member of the household was ultimately the most dangerous adversary to the palace's modern deceptions. The high-stakes documentation uncovered inside the Gatcom Park estate has permanently shattered the shadow networks operating within the British monarchy. By utilizing his technical logistics background to map out 15 years of systemic isolation, Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Laurence has successfully protected Princess Anne's household from corporate overreach. Queen Camilla remains completely isolated as the old guard reclaims control over the family's historical assets. If you want to stay informed on the deepest secrets and tactical power struggles within the House of Windsor, hit the subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on Sir Timothy Laurence's calculated strategy. Did the Princess Royal's household make the right move by completely dismantling the palace's secret tracking systems? Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.